Hey guys, the podcast will always be free. If you go into the description or the top comment, there's a locals, a Patreon, a buy me a coffee, a Cash App, a PayPal. Legitimately, $1 a month makes the world of a difference. I know you're thinking, no, it doesn't. It literally does. It keeps the show going. It's why it's so free flowing and hectic and frankly unprofessional and vulgar, but it's the reason why it's free and why it's fun. Please, if you can, donate $1. Thank you. And we are recording on Sunday, February 1st, 2026 at 10:10 a.m. Eastern time with Mr. Halsey, English, Dominic, Bruno, EM, Burlingame. Donny doesn't have a digital footprint, but EM and Halsey do. You guys can go to the description. Halsey's got a podcast. EM's got a YouTube channel, writing, Twitter, all that good stuff. But yeah, no, you don't change the nature of addiction. You just change what you're addicted to. And not that this has anything to do with anything we're talking about or what anybody asked, but when I got out of college and kind of just did a complete 180 and went from, dieting nonstop, studying nonstop, never have any fun, and then obviously expedited by losing my brother. It was just a total 180 of like drink, smoke. I had a midlife crisis at 23 when I lost my brother. It was like just go insane. And no matter what, I had just like, I had Pavlovianly affiliated intense discipline, or I could now say it's not even discipline, addiction with bad. And that went for several years. And then starting the podcast, it went back to like, well, I better start hitting the gym again, and because it makes me better. I can hold the conversation better. Man, I better be always reading so I can. The original thing was a fear of the guest stop talking. So I would just read as many books as I could so I could just start to regurgitate and vomit like I am right now. And then I went to dieting and sobriety. But now this really is objectively, this is no different than being 100 pounds overweight and drinking every day. It's
Right.
just, it's the podcast, it's dieting, it's
Right.
it's networking. And I've finally kind of made peace with, yeah, addiction's not bad in itself. Just choose the
hmm
vector
Yeah.
that you want to go on. So yeah.
The top endurance athletes, whether triathletes, uber marathoners, etc., over 80% of them, almost 90% are former drug addicts or alcohol addicts. The
Yeah.
really good ones,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a
Geez, EM, from the looks of it, you're addicted to not putting your heat on. Why you got a jacket on in the middle of the morning, brother?
Uh, well, I can't sleep in the heat. I
yeah.
just can't
Oh, I'm the
sleep
same
in the
way.
heat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's early morning here. Not quite as early as for Dominic, but yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, me neither. I got it. Yeah. You ever seen that meme where it's like cold going to bed and it's just like happy and it's like cold in the morning and it's just like evil. Like it really is. I was gonna, yeah, completely forgot because I'm a fucking narcissist and I immediately started talking about myself. I was gonna open the show with saying, and Halsey texted me that he was gonna release the Epstein docs, and that's what happened yesterday, but I forgot. So now it
It
doesn't even.
wasn't me. It was my people. We took
No, no,
care of
I,
it. Don't
I,
worry.
I was thinking like, man, it'd be so funny if I could like Photoshop a text from Halsey that's like, by the way, releasing the docs, like smiley face. And
The,
yeah, so everybody can thank Halsey for that. But yeah, no, it's I think it helped hearing yesterday, Steve Murray being like, hey, just for whatever happens the next couple of weeks, like center yourself. And I got on Twitter to post the podcast. And after like 5 minutes, it just was chaotic. I was like, what the fuck happened? And my first thought was like, this is Eve. And then I was like, why don't you just temper yourself? Why don't you just step away from it? And
Mhm.
because no matter what it is, if it's as insane as it seems to be, I can't help feel that that is the desired outcome from the
Yes.
viewers. Then you
Yes.
guys want to run with that. Yeah.
They need chaos. They all of their intentioned efforts, lower level intentioned efforts have failed. Now they must
Mhm.
drive us insane. What we have to understand is that what we are fighting is insanity. We are
Yeah,
fighting the insane. And what
that's why
this
I'm
is,
laughing, by the way.
yeah. So what people, the book The Eternal War, what are the resentfuls? The resentfuls are insane, but they're functionally insane. And that is a very dangerous thing. And that's what we have to understand. It took me a long time, a very long time, to accept that insanity is real. And unfortunately, I had to do it in the form of somebody being in my house for 14 years. right? And then having to remove them, unfortunately, well, in order to survive. But
Sure.
it is very, very hard for us as individuals to truly understand and accept that somebody is insane.
Mm-hmm.
Now we can see the babbling one and the one on the street corner, or the one in the asylum and the straitjacket, et cetera. Those are fairly easy, but the caricature of the Joker, in Nolan's movies, and then Joaquin Phoenix's renditions, those are kind of on the border. But there's a whole lot that are just like the Joker, but don't put on the makeup and don't act in quite that way. And many of them rise up into positions of power and authority. And so people talk about the two competing systems, right? There's two competing systems, authoritarianism and whatever else. I don't even know, because it's all nonsense. What we're really up against is we are up against a all-out fight between sanity and insanity.
Mm-hmm. Look at all those nurses that were posting all those videos. Like, oh, if a MAGA person or ICE person comes into your hospital, give them a paralytic and then slowly poison them. Like, these are healthcare workers. Like, do no harm. What?
I can't. I don't know which author, and I might even not even have the right. It was either Kurt Vonnegut or Russ Baker. It might not even be that. But there's a reason why they succeed, and it's because they're insane. There's a difference between boldness and you're like, well, this might not work if you invade this country and topple that. They as far as smart as they are, they just disregard the next day. They go, yeah, who gives a shit? And it can work at that level.
Annie Jacobson talks on this, I think, in Surprise, Kill, Vanish or Operation Paperclip. She says it, right? That at its foundation, the CIA, because the first three, the three guys that stood it up, were all insane. And two of them were psychopathically insane. And all they wanted to do was carry on the slaughter of World War II.
Yeah.
There's also right. Yeah, go ahead, Dominic.
Sorry, there's also, Tommy, I think this has to be nested within kind of where we are in the cycle, right? I think early on in the cycle, the seculum being a little bit insane probably has a high degree of optionality into it, because you have to be a person who doesn't accept the world as it's currently understood.
Early, and what time frame are you talking about? Early, like proto-humans, or like
no,
in the seculum.
So within the seculum,
I don't know.
Okay, yeah. So within the fourth turning, from let's just say 1943 until 1963, the springtime of the cycle, a small amount of crazy is a good thing, right? Because you see that you don't accept the world as it's presently constituted. You're willing to try crazy things, etc. Well, we're all the way at the other end of that cycle, where we are in a truly chaotic zone. And like EM says, I think that's part of the, EM and I talked about this a lot offline. I think that the whole resentful, responsible dichotomy is what drives the seculum. And so it's this, things were as sane as they were going to get, let's just say around 1950, and we have been going in the direction of insanity. And now we have kind of we're in the peak insanity time before, the opposite comes into play, and we'll start heading in the other direction. But yeah, right now, this is peak insanity. And, I think one of the reasons Trump is as effective as he is in this time is that he is a trickster figure, right? A coyote, a joker figure. And so it's not his job to be the august presidential, traditionally well-spoken, speechifying politician. His job is to be out there and just, EM, I think you said this in a podcast yesterday, you're probing the system, right? You're sending electrical pulses to see where the map is. So yeah, that's the period we live in, and we shouldn't be at all surprised at the insanity, because it can't be anything else.
And also, what is the goal of people like the Frankfurt School and modern day communists? It's to collectivize us.
Sure.
Right. And what they've managed to do, which I speak about constantly, is they've collectivized us around the worst possible thing, which is politics. It used to be people identified with culture or religion, or they even identified with sports or things like that. But now we've collectivized into the worst possible manner that we possibly can, in that we let our politics define us. And when you allow politicians to define your collective, it is pure insanity in and of itself. Because like a person can be, I'm never taking that vaccine, and then the next day you're a traitor if you don't take that vaccine. The fact that you can like legitimately say that and still feel okay with yourself. I told you I had an argument with a woman once, and I said to her, I said, "How is it possible that in the first year of COVID, right, there were no flu deaths?" And she said, "Of course there were no flu deaths. Everybody was wearing masks and social distancing." And I said, "Well, then how did COVID spread?" She said, "Well, nobody was wearing masks and social distancing." And I just looked at her like, "Really? I can't even continue this conversation." And I just walked away. Like,
so the reason communists are communist, the reason they collectivize, is because each insane person flickers insanity and competence in every once in a while for a brief period of time. So they have to collectivize so that at least maybe there's some capacity for them collectively to function. However, they don't actually function, right? And they use politics because politics by its nature is, the insane glee club from school, right?
Yeah.
So, they organize around politics because that's the way to throw up all the theater, right? All the masking. But what they're really doing in collectivizing, it's also why they go to slaughter and killing one another, right? And killing all, is through collectivization, at least they can survive, because somewhere in that collectivized system, there's going to be sane people who make things work the best they can until you kill off enough of them too, right? Because the one thing that insane really can't stand is sane people.
Yep.
They cannot.
And one thing defines insane people is that they're weak. That's the whole point. Is these people that are collectivizing are weak people. They're weak people that need to in some way project strength. So they do it through numbers.
Yeah, I don't know that that's necessarily true. I've met a good number of insane people who are incredibly strong. It's not that it's that for the most part, they have inhibitory neuron problems. They have impulse control issues, and they've had they're the ones who fail the Marshmellow test, if you understand that reference, right, from the old psychological study. Dominic, you're familiar with this study? Maybe you tell everybody the Marshmellow study.
Sure. So you get a kid in a room and you put a marshmallow in front of them and say you can have one, if you don't eat this marshmallow for the next 15 minutes, I'll give you 2 marshmallows. And you come back in 15 minutes and a very large percentage of the kids have eaten the one mushroom, and it's a measure of your ability to delay gratification.
Marshmallow, not mushroom. We're not talking to Clay.
Right. Well, that would be a much more interesting experiment.
No, we're not doing that. Yeah.
And so it's a measure of impulse control, a measure of ability to delay gratification, to measure time preference, and it's just even as children, a lot of people fail the marshmallow test.
Well, and if they follow
impulse or it could also just be somebody doesn't give a shit about the marshmallow. Like, I don't care.
Okay, so great question.
That's also like an important point. Is like,
it's a great question. So, do they care about authority? Do they believe authority won't give them the second marshmallow? That's part of So, back to one piece. What they did though is they followed some of these people for 40 years, and they identified that the ones who had impulse control, who understood authority, all the more complex things Tommy articulating, were vastly more successful in life. Why? They were sane. And the ones that didn't have, and then the ones that had the least success were the ones who ate the marshmallow. I almost said mushroom myself. The one you condition us now, Pavlovian, were the ones that ate the marshmallow and then lied about it. Bold-faced lied about it.
Yep.
Right? They're the ones that had the least. So back to what you're saying, Halsey, most of what we're finding is that there's impulse control. The impulse down at the base level, right, at the neuronal level, they have impulse control. Because they have impulse control, they don't develop complex self-restraint systems, models. Therefore they don't believe in authority, And unfortunately, a lot of their parents have impulse control issues as well. So the kid throws a fit. And so then the parent gives them whatever they want. So then the kid can do whatever the hell they want from the time they're little. Right?
Why do you hate women, EM?
Halsey, you did not need to put that out there in the zeitgeist. Somebody's going to take that. I do. It's crazy. I get that statement sometimes from women, right? But generally, I get the most support from women on the things I say about women. And generally, they're boomer, younger boomer or older Gen X generation women. They're like, no, you're totally right.
Don't even hold back. Who cares what's in the like? Don't bend to the crowd. To what Halsey was saying about
the estrogen. Don't bend to estrogen.
Yeah. But to what Halsey was saying about the collectivization, because that's a good point, right? There are things that we can accept as rational, but if you wrap it up in a politics type thing, it's almost like was it the Stanford experiment? Like you're hurting someone, but it's a test. Don't worry.
Yeah.
So you go, okay.
Or the prisoners.
In that same way, right? Because you can find this isn't just our own, as a group, our own bias. It's just like you can find the tweets of like Kamala Harris and Hillary Clinton be like, I'm not taking no Trump vaccine, and then like 30 days later being like, line up for this, or you're an SS officer, and it just no, and very few people even pointed it out. They went with it, and to see that, or the inverse, it could be like I believe it was Trump. He was the president that made it a felony in all 50 states to torture animals. Just seems like it's like a layup. He won't get that credit. You'll still hear people, and I've said this like I'm like, but can you like find that? Can you accept that that's good? And they're like, well, what's the motive? And I'm like,
yep, always what's the motive?
Which is
they'll say he just did that,
which is not a bad reflex to have to what the motive is. But okay, the inverse, and I'm not entirely sure on this one. I might be wrong. For the right-leaning crowd, Obama made it so that the families collecting the remains of their servicemen or women, children at Dover, no longer had to pay for their own flight to Dover. Up until then, you had to pay for your flight to go pick up your kid's ashes. The Obama administration made it so that they covered your ticket cost, and I think they also covered your hotel cost.
Yep.
Pretty good layup. And my point is not to put Obama on a podium or Trump on a podium. My point is if we cannot accept, like what is it, a scale? Is it Tarot, where you find out it's like citing a rifle. If we can't agree on like a base reality, it's good that it's a felony to light rabbits on fire. It's good that the government picks up the tab if you're going to pick up your children.
I remember that Obama thing when people would say he's only doing that so he can have better photo ops.
So my point is like, if we can't accept these two, like if we can't measure the ruler and we all accept this is 12 inches and then move forward from there, if we can't accept that Obama did that and it's good, or that Trump did this and it's good, to me, there's no point in further engagement with that person, because everything built upon that, if they think 1 + 1 isn't necessarily 2, there is no point in us arguing high-level calculus.
It's moral relativism. It's total moral relativism.
But what I do find, far lefty friends or far righty friends that go, that's fair. Then I go, now all of a sudden, their arguments that before this I might have thought was crazy, I'm like, they've got a foot in reality. Where's it coming from? Because it means that we can come back down to agree this, and I go, and it doesn't necessarily mean that their argument, there still can be breaks of insanity, but if they agree on that, I go, okay, I'm now willing to hear you out on why you think X, Y, Z, right? So sorry, EM. Yeah.
No, Tommy, that's brilliant. Halsey, let's go back to something you articulated about focusing around politics, right, as the worst of us, because it is the worst of us. Well, what motivates sane human beings, and even insane human beings, although they flicker in and out of it, is the human psychology determines its value in its social group based off of its contributions to the social group. That's physical contributions, financial, intellectual, emotional, so we, as a social mammalian primate species, ascertain ourselves and then the collective by our contributions to the community. Okay, well, we've skewed that in one way, going all the way back to the Romans, but really taking off, it's the financialist system where the value to the contribution is how much money you make. Well, that's nonsense. What is that as a contribution to the community? Maybe you're creating some jobs and maybe you're doing some things here and there, but usually not, but maybe, okay. But even that's not a true value of what are you giving to the community, because how are you making that money and what are you doing? And maybe that's causing even greater, okay. So, but it is a way that you can, and we've been in this way for 300 some odd years now, right? As the one of the top focuses increasingly. Okay. Once you take people's labor capabilities away, right? Their ability to go earn a living at a job, at jobs that they can change and improve and all of that. What are, and thereby they can provide for their family, and maybe there's a little extra for the community, and they can help out here and there, and maybe they can move up in their job and improve their ability to contribute to their community on free time or donations or, getting behind certain causes, et cetera. Okay. Well, you take that away, and what do people have left with, what labor do individuals have left whereby they can assess their status, their place in the status hierarchy? It's tribalism. It's politics. And this is why wokeism and identity politics took off when it did. Yes, it was intended by, the financialists to drive us away from Occupy Wall Street, that was actually succeeding. But they used that vector not because they made it up, but because it was already there and it was already expanding, because more and more and more people, now over 60% of people, were on the government dole. They weren't assessing their sense of value in the community. This is why I personally believe this is why they did this to the Black community on purpose, starting in the 1960s, is in order to drive people specifically to politics and tribalism and identitarianism as the only means of labor, contribution that people could assess themselves in their status hierarchy. And that's what got us to where, to everything and all that we see. It's down underneath. It's because steadily since the 1970s, labor and the fruits of our own labor has gone away, both in terms of outsourcing and in terms of this intentional increase in the welfare state.
Well, before they did it to Occupy Wall Street, they did it to the Tea Party. Remember the Tea Party was an organic group that rose up against government intrusion into your life. And Marco Rubio comes from the Tea Party. But then you started seeing these ridiculous people showing up to Tea Party rallies that said, government, keep your hands off my Social Security and stuff like that. And it just became so ridiculous that nobody turned up anymore.
Well, it became a tribe, right? Yeah, right. It's a sub-tribe, right? People, we are primates. We are still primates. We're just, as I say, linguistic monkeys, right?
Mm-hmm. But Halsey, my favorite comedian, Tim Dillon, had a funny thing just about what you said, Halsey. He's like, the Tea Party was weird in that it was organic and, people wanted to revert to some form of smaller government. And then it very clearly got co-opted because you have some woman on the side of a freeway dressed like Ben Franklin, all of a sudden talking about like the talking points of David Koch, like let Fourth Amendment, stay hands off my guns, and unrestricted mining in the Amazon basin. And people are like, wait, what? And it's like, that's when you're like, they're like, stay off my property and also carried interest loopholes. And you're like, wait, hold on.
Hold on a second. There's something about this that seems a bit inorganic at the moment.
Yeah. The resentfuls need us focused on politics because there is nothing real about politics, and it is 100%. Nothing but institutionalized insanity.
Mm-hmm. So Halsey, the word, if you don't know the word, entryism is something that's really worth studying. That was the word given to the way that leftists infiltrated other leftist groups and turned them communist. And that is a very old game that has been named and known, I think, since the 30s. So believe it or not, some factions of the left actually wrote some fairly good works on this, on how to stop entryism from happening within your own organization, because they were sick of being taken over by other leftists. Yeah, that's an interesting piece of that equation.
So
It's funny.
this gets,
Most leftist writers have made this like a big part of their entire being. Is how do you stay on topic and how do you stay on mission when you're going to have people trying to subvert your own movements from within? And they were aware of it because they were doing it. So it was kind of like, well, you're going to call out what you're already doing because you know what to expect. The right always assumes that we're so pure that it would never happen to us,
Well,
but
never happened to us.
that's why it happens to us 10 times worse.
Right, because responsibles can't imagine that someone would, covertly enter your organization because it's doing such objectively good things.
well, let's be careful there. I totally agree with you, Dominic. Let's be careful there. Let's not assess that the right is the responsibles. Let's not do that.
Yeah.
And let's also
The closest to the closest
and then
to.
let's not, as I've written about several times, let's also not assess the right as actually being on the right because it's on the left by definition. With respect to the entryism, right? Of course they're doing that. They're barely holding on to sanity, and they can't take on anybody else's insanity and keep their shtick going.
Yep.
Yeah, there's an interesting analysis of one of the drives towards politics becoming the central force. If you think about politics, let's just say as it existed in earlier eras, right? Like let's just pick the Tammany Hall era, right? And you would have constituents, and your constituents wanted real things in the physical world, right? They wanted money spent. They wanted labor done. You had to quite literally, if you were a politician, come up with the goods for your political constituency, for your patronage network. If you can ephemeralize everything and your constituents are now happy with you kneeling in the rotunda to the god of DEI, think about how cheap it is now to be a politician. You don't actually have to deliver real goods. All you have to do is
I tell this story all the time, and it's like part embarrassing, but at the same time, it was very eye-opening. When I did an internship in DC when I was in college a million years ago, and they used to have these mixers, right, where they would have like political figures come, and you could just show up and hang out with them. And I was one of those people. I went to all of them because I figured, you never know what kind of connections you can make or what kind of stories you can hear. So I went to this one, and don't ask me how I found myself talking to Geraldine Ferraro. I don't know if you guys know who that is.
Yeah.
She ran with Dukakis as the Democratic vice presidential nominee against Reagan when Reagan took 49 out of 50 states, right? And I said to her, I said, I love hearing stories that I can't just read in the mainstream media. Like, tell me something that I haven't heard before. And she said, after we got shellacked, we went to a Midwestern state, I forgot which one, and we were talking to one of the labor unions. And when we met behind the scenes with the heads of the labor union, we said, we promise you everything. We are the Labor Party. Like everything we could have possibly offered you, we did. And your people still voted for Reagan like by 80% margins. What on earth did we do wrong? And they said, you don't understand. He made us proud. And that was all it took. She said it changed her entire worldview on politics. Because these people that they had promised the world to, that they were like the primary representatives of, could care less because Reagan made them proud.
It sounds like they learned that lesson really well, and that's why the left has become, the traditional left has become all about form instead of substance. Because we offered labor everything they wanted, and we didn't get what we were supposed to. So, right, it's an interesting signal.
There is no.
They respond to the signal.
There is no left and right. They're all the same rotting carcass.
Right? I don't know if I would disagree with you, but
they're all the same. This is the problem, right? The problem is that, again, back to the primate, humans have to make contributions to their family, to their partner, to their marriages, to their kids, their broader family, their community, to earn and have real status, the kind of status that infuses your psyche and your nervous system so that you move through your day and you're dealing with the burdens of the day and you're okay with it. right? You get it, particularly for men, right? I need to know what my status is in my community, and I work hard at that. Not to know what my status is, but to earn status, right? To be of value. And that gives me the sense of purpose that wakes my old, tired, half broken ass out of bed every day, right? It's what gets me up early. It's what gets me to bed. It's what keeps me from being a drunk, right? Because I got some pretty good taste in scotch and wine, and I could be a drunk fairly easy, right? I got a friend of mine, Ron Psyche's brilliant sommelier. He was a Defense Intelligence Agency guy, and then he became a sommelier, and he is brilliant. But this is the problem, right? And this ties us back to the competency, delivering competency that you were talking about, Dominic, right? We have transitioned from a testosteronic status hierarchy where status has to be real and it has to deliver real things, and you have to actually produce, and you have to continue to produce and improve in your capacity to produce real things, to an estrogenic status hierarchy, what I call artificial status hierarchies, where you don't have to deliver anything but a feeling. Well, that's exactly what the financialists want, because they can monetize every bit of that, right? Without actually having to put the cost and the investments into the infrastructure necessary for things to actually get delivered, and the educational cost. And more importantly, they don't have to deal, and I had this conversation at the Four Seasons in Georgetown some years ago with a gentleman from one of the original American families that's still a prominent family, particularly in the halls of power. And he asked, because I set out 26 years ago about what does the new manorial estate look like? How do we bring a couple billion people in the capital asset owning class, or we were going to have these problems, and then blood, because that's the inevitable. And he asked me one just blunt question that I hadn't really thought about. And he said, "Oh, this is all great stuff, but how do you deal with envy? Right? How do you deal with envy?" And this is before I wrote The Eternal War. Well, then I didn't realize that part of, a good portion, when we all take a step back, a good number of the people around us are envious in all kinds of ways. And we actually have to expend resources, time, energy, thought, emotions to counter their envy in order that we can actually accomplish real things in the real world. And that's an overhead, right? That's on the liability side, but we don't put much thought or energy or effort into that. Well, where are we now? It's all envy. It's all the envious.
Now we're at a position. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, Halsey, go ahead.
We're now at a point also where we can't take wins. Wins are considered almost a conspiracy theory in and of themselves. Like whenever Trump gets a win, you'll see the majority of like MAGA come out and find some reason why it's not really a win. How it's really some kind of loss, or it's some kind of him cucking to somebody,
just wait for it.
Something.
Wait
like,
for it.
Yeah, like it's coming, and it's like, no, why can't we take some wins here? Like, why can't we build on momentum? Why can't we do good? And if you try to explain to people that some things are getting better, they'll just point to you why everything sucks.
Well, because it's a easy way, and then Tom, I'll let you go, but it's an easy way to shirk responsibility, and that might not be immediately obvious, but for instance, I don't know, losing weight, if you cut calories and you're like, all right, it's just, okay, instead of ranch dressing, I'll use whatever, ketchup or whatever thing. And then you actually start to lose a little weight, and then your pants kind of fit a little better and you start to feel a little better. You don't want to acknowledge that was your own efforts, because what that really means is your lack of efforts is what got you here. But more daunting is if you continue these efforts, you'll get better. I don't want to continue those. I think it was a fluke. I just lost 5 pounds. Because if you look at it and go, that was a win, voting and voicing your opinion matters, all of a sudden, everything wrong in the world, you go, maybe we can. It's so much easier to go, nope, lottery ticket, fuck that. So even if it's your guy, the guy you voted for, and he's doing things you want, if you accept that that's what's happening, you then have to accept that you have the ability and the obligation to change. But Dominic?
So I'd like to take a little bit of what we've been talking about and look at it through an evolutionary lens, because I think it might be kind of helpful. So there's this really good model that I like. It compares and contrasts, proto-humans, or not proto-humans, but let's just say pre-civilizational humans. And in the masculine world, right, let's call that the hunting party, right? The hunting party goes out into the unknown, into a dangerous environment, whether it's hunting or war. And everything about that environment is demanding clear communication. You get rewarded for seeing reality for what it is really well. You either win the war, or you bring back the meat. And so your status hierarchy, EM, like you talk about, that authentic testosterone status hierarchy is all based around how good are you at seeing base reality, making choices, and quite literally bringing home the bacon, right? And so all parts of that status hierarchy are based around how good are you at seeing reality and how good are you conforming to it. Meanwhile, back in the village, especially in winter, you have a longhouse, right, filled with women, their children, and that environment is completely different. And EM, to your point, you just answered a big question for me. The point of the longhouse is not to conform with external reality. The point of the longhouse is to raise children and to deal with envy. How do you keep all the women and children alive all winter, raising the children, and not have it devolve into camps that are, the men come back from the hunting party and all the women have killed themselves? Well, they have it, right, Andy, right? And so they have a completely different evolutionary drive in their relationship to reality. It doesn't matter what the real reality is. It matters, can we create a consensus reality within the longhouse that's going to get us through the winter, keep the children alive, and keep envy from, getting into a positive feedback loop that kills us all. Now, the men would come back from the hunting party, impose a degree of external reality, right? That's why you have, left brain, right brain, the Star of David, the yin and the yang, the left and the right have to come together, form balance. And then the men would go out again to a war or a hunt. And so it was this constant, rejoining of the artificial reality with the more real reality. And EM, like you've said, what has happened, let's just say since the 60s, and you can argue as far back as you want, is that women started to want to go on the hunting party. Right? We deserve to go on the hunting party. We're just as good as you. And it's like, okay, one woman can come on the hunting party, and it probably won't change the effectiveness of the hunting party. But how many women have to join the hunting party until the communication style of the hunting party changes? Mm-hmm. And so if you look at modern, let's just say entrepreneurialism or business, Halsey, I come from a filmmaking background. We think there's a product out there that's going to serve a major need. We're going to go into the unknown and make it happen. That's a hunting mindset, right? That's a pirate ship mindset. How many women have to join the hunting party until it loses that communication style? And it's not a majority, right? It's not at 50-50 that the communication style changes. It's at a much, much lower percentage. And so now all of our hunting parties can't communicate base reality to each other anymore the way that they used to.
Dominic's brilliant. If I can follow on from that, when the men went away to go hunt, the way in which they hunted, the manner in which they approached the difficulties and even the internal conflicts in the hunt, hard set irrefutably the social status of those men in comparison to one another. Then they come back to the longhouse, and that hard status hierarchy that's been proven in real shit, accomplishing real shit amongst the men, sometimes fist fights and duels and all that other kind of stuff has been worked out. When they come back, their women are now directly associated with that hard base reality status hierarchy. Right. You start taking women and you start taking them on the hunt, you have to lower the standards. Mm-hmm. You might get the 1 in a
100%.
million, 1 in 10 million, 1 in 100 million. And there's, people talk about those women who went through Ranger School. Yeah, talk to anybody that was actually there at the time, right? Total fake, total absolute fake.
Oh, it happened in Israel. They celebrated the first women's infantry combat unit, and they deployed them to Gaza. This was years ago. They deployed them to Gaza, and the second that they started taking fire, they threw their guns down, ran away. They found two of them behind a rock crying.
It was like Brisbane, like this shooting in Brisbane where the female cops were right there and they wouldn't go into the
The female Secret Service around Trump.
Correct.
Yep.
So Dominic, carry on what you're saying back to evolution. Men did the hard things that were life and death things for them and the tribe, right? For them and those in the longhouse, for their community. And yes, we can carry that forward. You're absolutely right. When you are in the startup world or you're in the new product world, you are taking a risk. It could cost a lot of resources. It could cost you your job. It could cost you everything. And the women that are associated with you, their status is based off of this. So I want to follow on. So you're absolutely right. It's less that we took them on the hunt. It's because they didn't want that. What they wanted is they wanted to be introduced into tribal leadership. They wanted to be introduced into the status conversations and distribution of resources conversations that the men were having, without having gone and done the things that gave those men that position and the differences in positions where they could argue with. So all the organic status hierarchies got blown away, and then people were introduced and invited into leadership that should never have been there because they hadn't done and couldn't do the things that were necessary. Okay, that's one piece. The second piece is why this is all really taken off in the last 60 years in the age of the welfare state. Women don't even have the men; they're not even bound to men who've earned status now, right? Increasingly. Less and less are bound to men who've earned status. So the women can't assess their own status based off of the man in their life and what his status is. And so now we've done this double whammy on women where we let them into things that they should never have been involved in because they had no background in it, that they don't have the wiring for it, and they haven't gone out and hard physically earned the status that the men have. And again, that's not all good stuff. Men go out and fight amongst each other. Right. We do horrible things to each other sometimes, but that's how we have to, orient, if there is some guy in our group and he's one of these envious ones, because men are that way too, and we got one of these resentfuls, we better check that dude. If we don't, it ruins the whole longhouse, right? Back to your statement, Dominic, right? So we do some really hard things that aren't just going and getting meat. There's a lot of other things that happen around the month or 2 or 3 months that we're out. And there's other ways of getting meat, like Linda's farm and, Viking raids, right? But there's all kinds of things that are going on, war briding. Yeah. But again, the point being I very much appreciate what you're saying. Women wanted to be involved in determining the distributions from the status hierarchies that they could not and did not earn. And then we went further from there, and women don't even now have the ability to improve their own sense of status. Now, women got to earn their own status in the world of women, et cetera, but they can't have a base to start with a father and his status, and a brother and his status, and more importantly, a husband and the father of her children and his status. Women don't have that. Now they're starting with nothing. And they're put in all these positions of, particularly in the business world, politics, all these managerial worlds, as if they have all of those things. And it's destroying them. Yeah.
Going a step further to what you're talking about, I talk about this with people. Excuse me. Why is it that when men decide they're women, they all decide they're this Barbie doll version of a woman, right? They have to have long blonde hair and wear lots of makeup and wear frilly dresses and stuff like that. It's the same thing women have about going to work. Right? It's that they have this archetype of what it means to go to work, where they think men go there, we goof off all day, we talk shit with our friends, we chase ass, we're like, it's like a good old boys club where we sit around and get paid not to do anything. And then they get horrendously pissed when they're actually asked to do something at work because they don't consider that to be part of what they signed on for. It's the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It turns out things actually have to get done, and talking shit around the water cooler doesn't get shit done. Sometimes I want to, if I can, I want to go back to something, Tommy, that you said. All right. The reason that we can't accept the wins, particularly today, we can't accept the wins because somebody bigger and more important than us did it. And we did nothing to contribute to it.
That's the other thing, where it's the inverse of the quote, wonderful things can happen when no one's concerned about who gets credit.
Right?
Yep.
So we have got a sickness amongst us that is very deep. It is as God Saad says, right? It's a mind virus, right?
Parasitic Mind. I need to read that.
Parasitic Mind. Yeah, it's a great book.
Very good book.
It is? All right.
Very good book.
Yeah. No, it's a great book. Give me a second. We have this parasitic linguistic construct that is destroying us. And it's no princes, no kings, no princes, down with princes, right? That is destroying us, because it is only princes that have the power and capacity to take on these big fights, these big struggles. And they have to earn, they have to earn that. Do I back and support a prince just because they're hereditary or they're, no, right?
Well,
but yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, sorry to interrupt. No, but it's to a degree. I think what JFK said about Curtis LeMay, he was like, you do not under any circumstances ever want Curtis deciding whether or not you go to war.
Yes.
That being said, if you go to war, you do not under any circumstances want any other man than Curtis LeMay leading.
Yeah.
You gotta let, when people are like, Michael Jordan's an asshole, he's too competitive. I'm like, okay, if I'm married to Michael Jordan, I might be concerned about that and how you raise kids. If I'm the owner of the Bulls, I'm like, yeah, fuck off. Is he doing anything illegal? No. He's an alpha. Fuck off.
Right.
He's gonna get you 6 championships.
That's another great piece, right? So Prince doesn't necessarily mean some great, wealthy, powerful guy. It doesn't necessarily mean wealth and high family status, etc. It could be a leader in your local. This gets, who's the one who created Down with Princes? The fucking envious.
Of course.
Yep. The fucking envious, the resentfuls.
No one that's a fucking alpha and a winner care. When they see another alpha and a winner, they go, how do I fucking get better than him?
Right?
Pussies go, he's cheating. Get him out.
Or there's he's got some other agenda.
There's a weight class.
So that's
he has the answers to that. Is versus when you see someone for instance, when I see someone with like a much better podcast and they're growing, people are like, well, he's a fed. I'm like, I don't care if he's a fucking fed. Like, how do I get there? How do I get better?
Right.
Like, sorry, Halsey.
But that's why people from Hollywood think that their ability to act on screen gives them some kind of status. I was just looking at an article 2 minutes ago, Molly Ringwald, right? Who the fuck is Molly Ringwald? And she says, Trump administration is a fascist government and warns that supporting Donald Trump's immigration policy will eventually result in Americans being found guilty of treason for having collaborated with the fascists when leftists take control of government. Like, where did she even get off to say, who the fuck is Molly Ringwald?
She made shit up. She's reading a script. Here's the problem with why all these entertainers are so pissed, because they cannot have the House staff at the same price point if we get rid of all the immigrants. And having been around that community much of my life, and from before my mother's life, that's actually closer to the truth than people realize. Oh, yeah. They're just upset that their lifestyle is going to cost them 4 times more for all the support staff.
Yeah, you see those tweets during the first Trump administration. You have all these actors that are like, "Oh, get rid of all them." Well, then I hope you guys like having messy lawns. It's like, what are you implying?
Right?
Yeah. Like,
nobody said anything about lawns but you. Like,
right? All right. Yeah. Good luck getting your laundry done. Washing your laundry.
Like, all right. Well, who's going to clean my toilet? It's like, if that's the conclusion, that's on you, dude.
Yeah, like seriously, like that's your concern. Is that some immigrant won't be able to get on their knees and clean your fucking toilet? Like, what in the fuck?
Yeah, no. total
Because
detachment from that.
I don't think it's just, the movie stars. You could say that that's
Yeah.
true of the entire professional managerial
Absolutely.
class, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
Well,
No, the
back to
movie
what you
stars is
said.
just the best
Back to
example.
back to
yeah.
what Dominic said about you no longer have to promise a steel mill. You just have to promise equity and pride, and so it's now bled over into their actors, and it's
Well, there is cognitive dissonance circuits. I wrote something on this the other day, right? Cognitive dissonance circuits are extraordinarily powerful. And and Dominic, to your point, the managerial class is extraordinarily good at lying to itself about the slavery it manages.
Mm-hmm. I mean, don't you remember after the election when Donald Trump won the first time, when the whole staff of the West Wing got into their suits and pretended to be their characters from the West Wing to tell you that the Electoral College
yeah,
could throw away the vote? And it's like,
yeah.
you people are not politicians. You acted in a show about politicians. What are you even doing?
Oh, but the politicians are
know?
actors too. They're just not good enough
True.
looking, right?
Yeah, right.
As Tim Dillon says, politics is for ugly actors.
Yes, exactly.
They don't have the body to become but that's also another point is I remember right when Trump won, one of the things I remember is some bitch going off on like CNN or something, and she's like, "We had De Niro," and someone was like, "Stop worshiping these gods that you've erected." He's like, "I don't doubt that. If you're in acting, he's your Tom. God bless." He's like, "But for the people in these hollowed out towns in the middle of Idaho, where there's no longer jobs, they don't care about, in the words, these false gods you've created and erected. No one gives a shit." They're like,
Well,
But
it's
the
back to
gods, the gods started lying, right?
Right.
Like once upon a time, let's just say 70s, 80s, all those movie stars were telling or a part of telling a much truer story that had like archetypal relevance. And
Mhm.
that we had De Niro comment is so interesting because they didn't realize that had been lost and abused and destroyed.
he's not
And
Raging
so,
Bull anymore
right, yeah, or Taxi Driver.
or
It's like, no,
Taxi Driver.
you haven't told the
Yeah.
truth in a long, long time, and that's
Yeah.
one of the reasons why Hollywood is in the shape that it's in. And EM, you and I had an offline conversation a few days ago about this, where basically, and I had never put this together, but that Hollywood was sacrificed by, at the time of Occupy Wall Street, they needed DEI to do a divide and conquer. The only way they could stand it up hard enough and fast enough was to basically burn the Hollywood asset to do it. And so here we are,
Yes.
having lost our, one of the main sense-making organs of our society, the stories we tell, the things we share in common, all of that. That's a big reason why the chaos, to go back to an early part of our conversation, it's one of the reasons why the chaos is increasing, is that the storytelling aspect is such a huge part of our sense making.
Hollywood was the marshmallow, and they said, "I'll burn this now," and a smarter elite would have gone, "You're gonna want that in 10 years.
You're gonna want that.
We've been using it for 100," and they went, "No, I want it now." And they injected it, and it worked for a little bit. You broke up your Occupy Wall Street.
It got them what they wanted, but it burned the ass.
But instead of 10 minutes, it's 10 years. And now you're
Yeah,
going,
no.
"I want another Hollywood." And it's like,
Yeah.
now everyone viscerally hates them.
So Dominic, let's bring this back to your Longhouse reference, right? How did they do it? They let women into the status hierarchy discussions and the estrogenic, right? This isn't all about women, right? Of course, but they let the estrogenic, right, into the status hierarchy, into the discussions about what status hierarchies are and how status hierarchies are determined. That's how they burned it.
Right.
And oh, by the way, terribly sorry, Dominic. Terribly sorry.
Go ahead.
There's another piece that adds to that just clicked as well, because I said that to you the other day, because you and I have great conversations. You prompt things, right? Before Hollywood, they had already burned academia
And publishing and journalism.
Yeah,
and science. And science.
And science.
Well, that's
right?
part of the academia. They had already burnt, they had burnt that 20 years earlier.
Well, isn't that
wasn't
part of the
enough
seculum?
anymore. Now they had to burn Hollywood, right?
Well,
so they're going through the asset classes.
Assets,
They're
yeah,
just
they're
burning
burning
them.
What's left to burn?
Right?
Humans.
I was about to say, no, it's because you've gone through all of them now. You said the last vestiges of science was COVID. That's now it's like they have no more marshmallows. Like, oh, so they're out of marshmallows, they're gonna stop? No, they're psychos.
They have one.
Now they will go, all right, no more assets. All right, just start fucking shooting them.
They have one left, and it's liberal democracy itself.
That's the financialist kill chain, EM.
Correct.
We just described the order of operations, right?
Yes.
Well, first it's industry, and then it's, and like
academia and science. Yep.
And that's why Strauss and Howe in the fourth turning says institutions crumble. Like that's the mechanism.
No, brilliant. Yeah, but the last one, Tommy, what you asked is absolutely the right question. The last hard asset they have is liberal democracy itself. And if we look at all the things they're doing with all the corruption of the courts, what they're doing with, states in secession, basically, with people in Congress in open secession and insurrection, all of it, right? What they've done with the placements of sheriffs and governors and district attorneys, et cetera. They are, and again, very much Dominic, very, very good. In stage 7 of the financialist kill chain, you burn liberal democracy itself. The ultimate, right? The ultimate parent institution of the last 400 years, you burn it last. And why do you do it? Specifically, again, back to the financialist kill chain, Dominic, brilliant, bringing it right to that. You do it to lock in the theft of generations of wealth. And this is what was scaring them with Occupy Wall Street. What was scaring them with Occupy Wall Street was the people. The people were on the right path. The people were right. And the people were doing the right thing peacefully to turn the steel around. And so what did that do? That accelerated their time frame. If we look at financial cycles, sophisticated financial cycles, I believe very much they were looking to carry on for another 40 years with the U.S. economy before collapsing it. But the Occupy Wall Street forced them to accelerate, very much to this part of the conversation, the burning of final, the few final remaining institutions that they had. They were of real value.
And I think Trump's first term accelerated it. I don't think they wanted COVID until 2028.
Well, he's trying to arrest it. Yeah.
But you know what it's kind of like? It's like when the audio of a video is not perfectly synced, but it starts synced, and as you go hours and hours and in, it starts to get worse to the point where it's no longer even the same thing. And you go, oh, it's not a trivial thing to say because it's not just they accelerated. It's not just like, oh, I'll just set my alarm 5 minutes earlier. That's different. You can get up a little earlier. You can go a little harder. What's different is it's becoming untethered.
Yeah,
to where you go.
Tracks.
You've had this 100-year boil the frog thing. You can't just turn up the heat at the end. It's not. The entire thing is that it's all a slow burn. Now it's right, it's accelerating, and then liberal democracy, it's like they've sold all the assets, they've sold all the furniture, now they're ripping out the copper wiring, and it's like,
oh, quite
you're a crackhead. Yeah, you're a crackhead. Like that's where
quite literally getting the despondence of life, not in the wiring, but look at the remember the photos of Los Angeles and that little corridor for the train and all of the boxes from all the stuff that had been stolen off the train, right? So all the high-level thieves have already stolen hundreds of trillions. Now we're getting down to all the low-level thieves that the institutions can't afford or just don't care to fight anymore. Now it's all now it's all of the management class, right? And particularly the lower-level management class is trying to steal whatever they can before the lights go out.
And Tommy, to your point, they burned Hollywood, and what was Hollywood's main job? I would say that it wasn't just the creation of narratives; it was keeping narratives in sync with each other.
And and a bigger picture, a pacification to a degree.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
keep the frog in the pot as the heat's increasing, because frogs can leap, and when a frog leaps out, some of them are poisonous, right? Fuck. So brilliant point. You're absolutely right. The entertainment industry, for all of its faults, is the synchronization, right? In technologies and in military technologies, we have a 1553 chip, and the 1553 chip is what synchronizes most oil We may have moved to another platform now. I haven't worked on it in 20 years, but I used to work on the semiconductor, the 1553 timing chip, which is, like an F-15 or F-18 might have 300 of these in it. So all the different systems could time to each other, and satellites, and, what was called the TCA, Transformational Communication Architecture. Right. So very much, Dominic, to what you're saying, academia was a timing mechanism. Science was a timing mechanism. The entertainment industry in its various forms, not just Hollywood, but, music and publishing, et cetera, were timing mechanisms. And they've been steadily burning through all of those. So, and then brilliant what Tommy's saying, what's happening now is we're now living two different tracks. Some of us are watching the video with the sound off, and some of us are listening to the sound with the video off.
Right.
And we're both living in the same reality, but not in the same. Well, we're living in the same reality, but our syncing and timing are off from one another. And then try to explain to the person with the video off what's going on, where they are in the audio, what's happening in the video that they're not seeing, and try and explain to somebody who's watching the video but not the audio where the narrative is.
And Ian, what you just described is something that we need a word for, right? Because like we've been talking for an hour and 10 minutes, and we finally got to, something that, it needs its own word. It needs its own piece of vocabulary.
It's divergence.
Yeah, we're in this place where crazy, novel things are happening. We're trying to use old words, left, right, Republican, Democrat. None of these words mean what they meant when we were growing up. And so you're trying to, and this is, Tommy, this is something I would like for you to pose to the bald ones, the next time you do it, which is, okay, we're all of us collectively, Tommy, your entire podcast, we're trying to get to and figure out what the hell is going on in a chaotic period. And you can't. You can only probe and respond, like EM's electrical analogy yesterday. And so we need some new words. We need a word for whatever is happening in Minnesota, because it's not fraud. I mean, it is fraud. But what does it mean when it's fraud, aided and abetted by the government, but it's also part of a population replacement, and it's also part of a domestic insurgency, and with like multi-level deep state and international support? We don't have a word for that and what that means.
This is why I wrote the book, The Eternal War, Dominic, very much to what you're saying, is because we need even if we do have the words, there's too many of them now for us to keep up with, right? So we need to simplify down to base, first principles, right? And we need to, very much to your point, most of the linguistic constructs with which we've operated the last 400 years are so corrupted, they have no value whatsoever. So I wrote The Eternal War specifically about that. How do we have what are the deeper underlying combatants? Who are they? What is the thing that we are in combat over? And how are the ways in which that combat on the eternal war side, because we're always engaged in this, we're never going to win this conflict. It's a perpetual thing. And then on the other side, how do we not get destroyed in the war? Well, we play a very complex, sophisticated, ever-changing, adapting game, right? And I take that from, forgive me, I can't remember the gentleman's name, the Catholic gentleman's name, but finite versus infinite games, right? He articulated finite versus infinite games. It's a brilliant book. It's a little pamphlet. Everybody should read it. But that's where I take the infinite game, the concept of the infinite game from, right? This is this never-ending open world game. So very much what you're saying. I wrote the book. It's very simple. It's as simple as I could. I try to make it as close to what machines can read as possible, and not all flowery, etc. Tucker Max wanted me to write something more extensive, et cetera. And maybe he was right. But very much what you're saying, we have to get down to first principles. And unfortunately, this look to previous institutions isn't going to work. And that includes the Abrahamic belief systems. This includes, at least the churches are based around, et cetera, and even the Bibles, et cetera, because they've been written and rewritten specifically to sustain. So all of that, okay, why do we need to do this? Why do we need to find, this baser code that we can all get to in our own ways? Because we have to resynchronize. We have to get the audio and the video track back on the same timing. We can't force that, right? Because then that's a cataclysm. So we got to go through all of this vergence. And that's the actual word for what's happening. It's called a vergence, right? Star Trek or Star Wars folks, the vergence and the force, right?
Divergence.
There's the vergence, right? So that's what's happening, but we can't just force it back. That's what collapses things in absolute cataclysm. So we're going to have to, in all these complex ways, and it's not just 2 tracks, right? There's 13 different audio tracks in the audio, or 20, and there's, 30 different video, you can articulate that way better than I can, Dominic, right? But, there's frames over frames melded in with other frames, et cetera. So the point is, we're going to have to figure out how we recalibrate, resynchronize so that the audio video tracks, the psychological and neuroemotive tracks of our lives come back to something that actually is functional and real, and we can all view it, observe it, and participate in it. But we can't force it.
That's a great word. That's a heck of a great work. And I appreciate your point. Here I'm looking to come up with a yet more complicated word to describe something. And you're making the point that no, we need to be going in the opposite direction. And you're right. For entropic reasons, the answer to our problem is not more and better language. The answer to our problem is finding whatever that convergence is going to be.
This is okay. We have reached beyond thermodynamic limits. We cannot put any more into more complexity to get the 2 tracks back together, right? We can't force the thing. We just don't have, and unfortunately, this is what they're trying to do with AI and tech and quantum finance and all this. They're trying to eigenvalue us up more complexity to try and force us to some track. And unfortunately, they're going to fail because unless they do get rid of humans and they go to machines, because only machines are going to be able to make that leap, because they're going to obviate everything that has to do anything to do with humans. And that means 99.999% of the complexity of computation, right? So if humans are still going to be of value, then we have to go back to simpler things. And we need to start working on how we bring these 2 tracks back to, we get a vergence or a convergence, not a vergence at some point. And we have to do that knowing it's not a matter of more investment. It's actually a matter of dramatically reducing the investment we put in every day. And Tommy, this gets to your meditation, right? What are you doing? For that period of time in your day, you are reducing complexity.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're reducing
today.
Your investment.
I'll start to look at like the higher and higher orders of like YouTube views and hours and thumbnails and network, and then it always comes back down to when I'm like, it starts to like, I don't know, when it starts to get a little hazy. I'm like, there's too many things, there's too many. I come back down to like, what has worked today and this day last year and this day the year before. Like the guests changed, the regular guests changed, the themes changed, the presidential administration changes. What keeps working? Show up every day, do 5 shows a week, try to be honest, try to be, respectful, well-read, give it your A game. Where's the money come from? Every year, if you looked at the sources of revenue, they're all wildly different, but the revenue itself keeps coming. And it's taken a long time to be like, it's not adding more. Okay, well, I need to improve by 1.4% on BitChute and then Rumble and Spotify. No. It's just like what, and that is only possible through confidence in your own experience to go, I know it will work if I just, what does push-ups have to do with the podcast? I don't know, but I can tell you they're inseparable. I think there are certain things where I'm like, I don't fucking like, why? I don't know. Why do I put on clean socks? I don't know, man, but it's part of the podcast. Like, and that's what it is. And I think that's what, but your natural instinct is to, it's got to be more complex. I need the same people that are like, I got to get the better whey protein. It's like, no, you gotta just go lift weights until it hurts. Like this,
if I invested more, it'd work. What the problem is at a certain point, there is no more to invest that's real.
Yeah.
Oh, go to the prepper community and find out about the money that they invest in all the stupid shit that they buy in order to stay alive when the shit hits the fan, that none of it will matter at all.
No, it's loot drops. It's loot drops for us people who do stupid, simple shit. I tell
that to people all the time. Thanks for keeping my gold for me. Well,
when people tweet it, they're like, I've got 10,000 ounces of silver and a million pounds of MREs. It's just like screenshot, no
GPS location,
screenshot, address. Thank you.
And not only that, you're like, you keep doing that, keep stacking it because I know you're climate controlling it. You got it. You got it. Note to self: hit that place. That is what it is, but it's the opposite, and it's also what you're saying about like thermodynamic abilities is, whenever there's a new sweeping, like John Poindexter right after 9/11, the total information awareness, he was like, we just got to get it all. And it's like, sure, no, I get it and what you're going for, but like technology didn't stay still. And between now and then, it's like, well, then there's iPhones and social media. So now it's infinitely. So then what you have to do is you have to, all right, well, we need even bigger supercomputers. And it's like, and that's trickling down. Like, and it's just, you're trying to stay ahead from, if you took today's surveillance state and somehow were able to like apply it to 1926, you probably would have had a rap, but you don't. You're like, what is this? What we're doing right now? This was made possible by the very pursuit of computation and internet. We are now talking in a way, and it's going to go out through all these channels in unpredictable and unknowable ways, and then it's going to get crazier. And you can't stay ahead of it. It's just eventually it will catch up, or at the very least, if it doesn't, there is a max between the amount you can get ahead.
Well, and the value shifts to the marginal anyway, right? So it's a piece of information that whatever piece of information you don't know now becomes as valuable as everything you've collected.
We have reached a point to where, the great deception, I write about this, people can go find the articles on Substack and Twitter, the great deception and the panopticon con. What they articulate to us, they are not capable of doing even remotely. But what they are capable of doing quite extraordinarily, because this is actually the truth of most real power, is convincing us that they can do it. And then we self-regulate.
Gorbachev, I don't know if it's actually from Gorbachev or if it's just from the HBO series Chernobyl, but our power comes from the perception of our power.
Right.
They think
Gorbachev said that about Glasnost and Perestroika.
Okay.
He did say that.
So legit power comes from the perception of power.
Yeah.
It's a non-trivial thing. It's like a non-trivial statement both ways. You can understand the self-regulation, but it also allows you to go like, oh, that might actually just be like a shadow on the wall. It's not actually a monster. It's just a branch in the moonlight going through your window. You're like, oh, and they don't like that.
No.
But it's very powerful.
So what do they do? This goes to they don't like it. This goes to what Dominic was saying. So what do? They continually increase the complexity. They're always, sorry, Dominic, not to punch you, right? But they're always looking for a more sophisticated word to explain a more complicated thing, because they're constantly coming. The whole woke thing, that's what it was, right? You just read this, right? I never read a single one of the woke books. Why? Because I read Jean-Paul Sartre when I was in prep school because I had to. Mm-hmm. That's the one paper I failed because I literally told the teacher I refuse to read this trash. It's nothing but gobbledygook sentences. And I read it in both French and English, right? And it was gobbledygook in both. So, what they are constantly doing is constantly increase the amount of complexity. And the only counter from each other if we keep adding complexity, right? This isn't a technical issue, or it's not a.
Ironically enough, you just froze up for a second, and then you said your first words backward. This isn't a technical issue.
I was wondering if it was just for me or if that was for me too.
Dude, the weirdest, sorry to interrupt though, and not, man, I think it was maybe the last bald ones or the one before. at the same time, Jim and Tom both got phone
Phone
calls,
calls.
and they
Yeah.
both turned and swore. Jim's like, "What the fuck?" And Tom's like, "God damn it!" And then they both left. And Dave and I were like, "Did it
It
simulation
never
glitch?
happened before.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Simulation just glitched?" And then they both came. We were like, "What the fuck was that?" And they're like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like,
No, the simulation glitches all the time. I've been doing podcasts with Tom since 2017,
Mm.
right? And this one time he says to me, he goes, "I can't do a podcast where we're celebrating my birthday tonight." And I said, "Oh, really? When's your birthday?" And he told me, and I said, "Oh my God, that's my birthday. We have the same birthdays." Then about a year later, he says, "Oh, I can't do a podcast tonight. It's my wife's birthday." I said, "No shit. Our wives also have the same birthdays." It's the weirdest fucking thing. Like, yeah, the simulation just burped, you know?
Well, that gives us hope, right? Maybe if we just stop trying so hard, maybe if we stop investing so much in all this complexity and we just said, that's enough. I'm not going beyond this point anymore. I'm not going to, maybe the convergence happens of its own.
maybe glitches are the rule, not the exception.
Maybe the glitchers are telling us that that's the synchronization, right? That's the natural,
The threads coming.
universal synchronization.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we're not listening. We're not like, oh, right. I'm going to give you an example. Okay. So I've been studying Norse mythology pretty heavily here recently, particularly because of conversations with Clay Martin, right? Around Ragnarok, etc.
Yeah.
And I don't want him to come down the street here and barbarian in my house, right? We can do that shit outside. But I've been studying Norse mythology because, we talk all about Valhalla and Odin's halls and going to, hopefully a Valkyrie chooses you and you go sit right at Odin's table. But what isn't put out there very often is actually the first half of the Einherjar, the Fallen, go to Freya. They don't go to Odin. And they go to Folkvanger, which is very, very different. So I've been studying all that, the last month or so, trying to really understand it. And I've written a piece on it and I'm thinking through it. But one of the things was, well, my whole life I've been trained to be a warrior to try and go to Odin's halls from the time I was a child. Well, how would I know if Freya was even talking to me?
And I think Ram Dass says that about meditating. He's like, it takes you a while to stop looking and to start listening. And like the
Yeah.
best way I've been able to find it through the podcast, and I think I heard Robert Downey Jr. say it a while back. I don't know but just as somebody who's achieved his success.
Yeah.
It's you get quieter and quieter, and really what it is, I think he describes it, he's like, it's a fishing line. It's barely there. And you can't notice if you're doing X, Y, and Z, but if you get really quiet, out in the middle of intergalactic
You'll
space,
catch the glimpse.
you can
Yeah, yeah.
feel gravity at the tiniest little bits. And that, for me, again, that's kind of what meditation is slow everything. Then even on a bigger picture, it's like losing weight, getting sober, all these things. As you get more and more quiet and you're like, what do I actually want a Lamborghini? Do I actually want all these women? Do I actually want all this money? Versus you start to be like, oh no, I want to be around my parents more. Oh, I like when I do shows that actually help. And they gets very, very quiet. And it's the most unintuitive thing because your mind is like, we got to go out and fucking hunt it down.
More complexity.
So Freya, it's like you have the hunter mindset. You're like, we got to go out and fucking kill it. And it's like, now it might be something completely different.
Yeah.
So how would you know? You wouldn't.
So Tommy, within the tracker school methodology, the figure who founded it, an Apache who's called grandfather within the tradition, grandfather would never say, "I'm going hunting." He would say, "I'm going for a walk with some arrows."
To stab that bitch over there.
Because because the whole methodology of tracker school is concentric rings and what happens as you interact with the natural environment. And if you say, "I'm going hunting," you just affected your hunting environment.
Oh,
Intention. So to the brilliant to the Freya thing, right? We went to Park City a couple of weeks ago, and all kinds of things happened from like the day before all the way through. And quite in your face, kind of, oh, I can't believe this. I was in that frame of mind, quite literally. I was in the cognitive, conscious frame of mind of trying to hear Freya. every single one of the things worked themselves out within a few hours in a way I never would have thought of. And we wound up having a great skiing weekend with very close friends in there and his family, his kids.
It's the most
Right.
it's the most unintuitive. I do it all the time with this podcast, dude. I'm like, find the target, destroy it. And sometimes that is what's called. Other times it's like, answer that random email about that random guest. And you're like, fuck it. Yeah, what do you want? How do you? And then that thing opens XYZ and it leads to, yeah.
It's what I realize is that Freya loves me too. The mother, right? Mother Freya loves me too. And I haven't been listening. And
Yeah.
I think, in the Christian faith, right, it's Christ, right? Not to put Freya and Christ in the same, but I mean, it's the same, in the Christian belief system that, Christ loves you, right? It was a very powerful thing that happened over about 3 days, where this whole sequence of things that if I tried to figure it out would have turned into fights and would have cost quite literally thousands of dollars more, et cetera. And just because I was in that place, listen, right? And it was somewhat of a test on my part. Does Freya care, right? Does the mother care? And they all got worked out in ways I never could have imagined. They got worked out fairly quickly. We wound up having a wonderful time. Even one of the ladies who was involved in one of the issues, wasn't her, it was the system she was in. We wound up having an extraordinary conversation, found out we lived in California, not too far from each other. Her kid lived somewhere, that there was all these overlaps between our lives that this lady in the kiosk, well, the skiing ticket kiosk, I never would have known.
And there's also like, and I found in my own experience, sometimes there's a hesitation to do that whole method of the feminine, of letting it go,
Letting it be. Yeah.
because in my mind I go, is this the beginning of the path down the whole resentful princess? It can start to get very, well, I tell myself all the time, there's a difference between noticing when a muscle is hurt and you're gonna hurt yourself versus being a pussy. You going, my shoulder kind of hurts today. It's like, really? It hurts today. Versus you're pushing through it and it's like snapping and shit.
Pin.
But I find that all the time in myself, where I'm like, maybe if I like let go and get quiet, and part of me is like, that's also what I like to do when I'm tired. Are you sure you're not just being a pussy? And the only way you can know for sure is feel it out. And sometimes it does start, you go, oh, this actually is a method. Other times I found like, maybe, be more passive and listen. And then I find I'm getting thrown around and it's like, okay, now I got to turn it and go, well, what if I just go like psychopath, like brute force? And then the door opens. I'm like, well, then that was the one. So for my own hesitation, sometimes I'm like, slow down and listen. And part of me is like, yeah, that's beta shit. And oh, that's next thing I know, I'm going to be going, no kings. Like, I don't know, but I guess the only way you can know for sure is you try it and you experiment it and then see if it actually.
You got to listen to both, right? That's the thing. And then if you're listening, not to one or the other, but you're listening, again, in my ancestral system, right? You're either going to hear Odin's voice or you're going to hear Freya's voice, right? And you're going to hear both, but one of them is going to be stronger. Like, to the point, right? I've had times when I was an athlete, that I would have the same thing. It's like, oh, I'm feeling this, particularly because I had hip damage because I got hit by a van. Whole crazy story. But anyways, sometimes I would listen to the pain, but then and mellow and calm, not go fill that time with something else because I'm physically hurting. But within an hour or two, the signal to go train, to go work out got so strong. It's like, okay, I'm going.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'd go work out. And sometimes it would make the pain go away and I'd have a great training. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's really only trial and error. Yeah. No, I'll get that where I'm like, it hurts. And then you start moving and you're like, oh, it feels better. Then there are times where you're like, fuck it, I'm going to go in there. You do 2 reps and you're like, fuck.
Yeah. Exactly.
And now you're out. Yeah. So
yeah.
I mean, I guess to kind of wrap that into like big pictures, that comes back to like where we are now, when all these chaotic things are happening, when they're burning all the marshmallows and they're bringing it down, and the liberal democracy, and as the audio video, it's all deviating. Yeah, how do you get? And I don't have an answer for that. How do we as a collective, as a society, get back to that? There's going to be, I imagine, 2 competing voices of how do we, and I don't have the answer, but it feels like it's on the meta level. It's like it's me meditating. It's
We got
your
to
ski
reduce
trip.
complexity. Yeah, we got to
Yeah.
reduce complexity. That's got to be the name of this show, the burning marshmallow test.
Let's go to reduce complexity.
But
Yeah, I think one of the ways to look at what you just described is it goes back to those articles you recently written about cognitive dissonance, right? Where it's like, go ahead and think your way through this problem. I dare you, right? It is now, can you think about certain things and maybe come up with some interesting things? Sure. But it's like, that's part of the trap, is that, your thinking is increasing complexity. And,
while your brain's lying to you to protect you using cognitive dissonance.
Cognitive dissonance. And so, DM, I think there's a hell of an article to be written about wokeness as an energy dissipative structure, because it took male and female and turned it into this, which turned it into this. And so if you're looking to literally burn up energy and divide and conquer,
you need a radiator,
right? You need, it's, and so here we are trying to recondense out of, from steam back into water. And yeah, isn't it interesting that it's the, a society's archetypal feminine voice that you're in contact with?
Well, particularly given my mother and wife and all of that.
Well, I was going to say also about the cognitive bias and dissonance is sometimes I'll get that meditating where I'll start to like the original, the first thought of like, I need to stop thinking about everything I have to do with the podcast. And that helps. And like that brings you back a level of back to less complexity. But then after a while, as you sort of, I don't know, clean up those thoughts, you're like, well, now what do I need? Then you're like, oh, wait, these are thoughts. So you get a little quieter and you're like, okay, now just focus on the breath. And then after a while, as it gets more quiet, you're like, wait, now, telling myself to focus on the breath. So you stop imposing, and then finally you come back to just the experience, right? The subjective, and that's the whole, whatever, enlightenment. But yeah, no, it's these, you're meditating, you're like, I need to relax. How do I stop thinking? It's like right there. You're mopping and like walking in front of it, and you're like, fuck, you just keep mopping. It's like you eventually have to stop. So yeah, I don't know.
Tommy, there's a reason why most civilizations have some form of divination as a part of their practice. It's whether you're throwing, a tarot reading, casting the runes, rolling the bones, you can look at that from a Western scientific point of view and
Whatever
say
you want.
That's statistically worthless. But then there's a point of view that says, yeah, but you're going to overthink it anyway. And so by artificially inserting randomness into your choice matrix.
Flip a coin, yeah.
Flip a coin, right? Whatever it is, throw a dart on the wall.
Yeah.
There is some very interesting value in that practice for just those purposes.
I think it also Dominic, I think is brilliant. I think it also reminds us that there is actually a divine, and there is really connection with the divine. And all of the monkey mind, which is the linguistic mind, is not the way to the divine. You can't get to the divine with words.
And what Halsey said about the birthdays is you go, maybe there is a divine. And all of a sudden it click in very meaningful ways. And you're like, hold on.
Yeah.
What the fuck is that? What is that?
This was the lesson of the Freya thing, a couple of weekends ago. That's exactly what it was. It was a reaffirmation that there is a divine. Now, for me, conceptually, I understand Odin and Freya. Others conceive it, but that's what it was. It was a reaffirmation of the divine. It's also partially why I'm taking February off. Because there is some things I need to study a little deeper. There's some writing. My daughter needs, some time for me. Family.
Notice he says that on February 1st.
Yeah.
Well, it's because he told me this last week, and like, and this is where the hyper brute force Tommy comes in. I'm like, you're off for February. I'm like, well, I got to get you on for several more shows real quick, and that's the psychopath side of me, where somebody's like, I need some time off. I'm like, let me just squeeze the last bit of energy out of you, and then I'll toss you to the road. So I'm a bad person, which is why he's here in February 1st.
Well, and also, right, monkey minds think that February 1st and 2nd or 3rd are real things that we didn't make up, right?
Good point.
So it'll probably be sometime in you monkey mind people's 3rd or March, right?
Yeah.
But it very much a good portion of that is that I am very much more now to the question of how do you reduce complexity? How are you allow yourself to reduce complexity in your life and still feel okay in this unbelievably complex world? You have to have some faith and connection to the divine.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have this understanding that there is this thing vastly beyond any complexity that humans have ever come up with in all their time, everything combined. There is a thing out there that if you listen back to the birthdays, right, Halsey and Tom, there are all these little synchronicities that are happening, these little synchronizations that are happening in the network, the circle, the things that are happening, but we don't pick up on them and we don't hear them for what they are. It's like, no, you're grounded. You're in the divine. You're here. Right.
It wasn't an accident that you met this person or did
correct
that or whatever.
And that you have this much in common to give you a further strengthening of why you should continue in communion. Terribly sorry, Tommy.
And then back to what Halsey said about how if we can't take a win, it's kind of that same thing. Because if you do take a win, and what was the win? When I slowed down and reduced complexity, I got closer to the divine. No part of you can take the blaring win of like, there is a divine. Instead, you're like, well, that's just an anomaly. And it's like, you don't want there to be a divine. You think you do, but you're like, nope, that's not God's blessings. That was just, and it's like, okay, well, now because
you always want to think that it was on you.
So now this is just actually some fetish. You just want to be abused because you're a fucking loser. And it's like, that's what it is. But
it's monkey mind, as Das and Buddha, right? What did Buddha say? Buddha said that all the suffering of all, the root of all suffering is attachment.
Desire. Oh.
It's attachment, right? And what are you attached to? You're attached to feelings, right? Okay, but further, I thought you had to remove all feelings. I thought I had to be like Spock, and I wanted to be anyways.
Well, then you go through all the rabbit holes of like actually becoming an ascetic, and then it's like.
And then when you realize, when you get down to it, when you realize that that's not what Buddha was saying. Buddha was saying you're going to feel something. It might not be good. What you are attached to is wanting to feel something different than what you're feeling. Yeah. Just feel it. And just don't give it meaning, don't give it purpose, don't attach to it, don't hold to it, don't try to monkey mind it.
Experience
it and let it pass.
And then we'll wrap it up because I have actually so you have another show. But I want to bring you back to actually something what Halsey said when you
my slave master. I told him I'm breaking free. And he said, "Who told you could break free?"
I was like, "Get back in the fucking fields, boy!"
I sent him a photo of Django.
Yeah, Django.
Right?
Yeah. I was like, "No, I'll crack that fucking. I'll go from talking about the divine to very quickly. I will go back 200 years and be like, now you listen up, boy."
Sorry, Tommy, you were saying.
Yeah, but what Halsey said when Halsey had me on his show, and it's one thing I think about is when you're like, what is this? You can't eat, pork, or you can't eat shellfish. You can't do this on this day. You can't wear, and you're like, some people go, well, it's an analogy or it's a metaphor. But Halsey, you had a great point. You're like, well, if we're talking about the most beyond omniscient force, God, how could you possibly understand? Because some things it's like when you're a kid, your dad's like, you'll understand when you're older. But there are other, like your dog will never understand. It just kind of eventually knows to trust you. And it's like, the dog's never going to grow up and go, Tommy, there's always going to be that deviation. At a certain point, you just have to trust that it's a higher thing than you'll ever conceive. And I think about that all the time since we've talked to all these. Like, there are some things where that is the lesson, and you're not going to understand it because you're a fucking goldfish. And it's like, okay, then just trust it. And that's a very difficult thing, but that comes back to the whole reduced complexity. Is like, you don't know why. You're not read it. You don't need to know. You don't need to know what's in that container. You just gotta you're dropping it on Hiroshima. And you're like, all right. I don't know if that's the best example. Vaporizing.
So what I said was actually the comment that I normally make backs up what EM was saying completely. What I always say is because a lot of times people in Judaism will tell me, they'll say, I don't think God cares about what I eat or what I do on a Saturday. And I'll say, well, that's the easy part for me. I can easily accept that God wants things from me that I'll never understand. This is an omniscient, this is the be all, the beginning and the end. How am I ever going to understand that? I said, what I have a problem with sometimes is believing in God. So it's that's where my struggle is like when I see the suffering that we go through on earth, sure. I say to myself, is there really a God? Not that I think he cares, like I could fully get that God would want to tell me what I could eat or what I can do on a Saturday. Like I'm not supposed to understand that stuff. That makes complete sense to me that I wouldn't understand it. But that's the difference between me and other people is that there are times I question whether there's a God, and that's where I
Sure.
have a struggle with a
How
religion.
much
You
I get
know,
that all the time. Yeah, no,
how
absolutely.
much better is the fish because it understands the nature of water?
that's such a good way to put it.
Well, I would say, but lastly, to what you were saying, Ian, about that ski trip is then you can kind of you can't
Writing that down.
Halsey's losing it, but like
That's
it
really funny.
it does come down to you can do your this is where you can use the rational mind. You go, well, what if I just follow it? What if I try it out? Let's see what happens if I do get quiet and I stop trying to, flow chart every podcast. And if the results are time and time again, you're like, that actually worked out. To me, I'm like, I'm never gonna find the memo. It's like you're never gonna find the memo that says, "Hey, we're killing JFK." It doesn't exist. They're not stupid. They got rid of it.
No.
You're gonna get really close to it though. You're gonna go, all right, it's the last puzzle piece. That's kind of how I feel about God is when I go, why does this happen? Why, like for instance, like when I see like my friends, like and they've got, I'm 35 and they've got like their newborn and like every day they're sending me pictures. They're like, dude, I've never it's the most beautiful thing in my and it makes me so happy. And then it what comes back to is I'm like, so my brother that committed suicide was the firstborn. And then I go, I thought I understood that loss. I understood that loss from a sibling point of view. Even now, I'm like,
Yes.
I don't even. It goes blank. Like
Yeah.
it just
Mhm.
goes, doo, like the white. I'm like, it's trying to look into a nuclear explosion, and so that stuff does. No, Halsey, it absolutely. I'm like, how could how could God let that exist? And I don't have the answer for that, but I do know is when I do follow the hypothesis that there is a God, life tends to get better, and I start to
Mhm.
become, then whatever you can go. But yeah, no, there are absolutely things where I'm like, yeah, I don't have as much as an issue as like you can't eat fish. I'm like, all right, whatever.
Mhm.
Things happen. You're like, how could you let that happen? And I don't have an answer for that. But again, I
Mhm.
don't think you're ever going to find the memo
So
or the fingerprint of like, hey, we're doing this.
we all need
Mhm.
faith, but it's not faith in a structure or a system. Or what we need faith in is that we don't have to know everything or be in control of everything and be, and, that our requirement to be, for us to be okay, we have to know everything and be in control of everything. We have to have faith that that's not the case.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a guy I learn with every day. I learn religion with every day, big rabbi. And he said to me once, he goes, I want you to give me a word that can describe God. And I was like, well, the creator, but he says, but he didn't just create everything. He runs everything. So he's not a creator. Try again. And it's like the conductor. Well, he doesn't drive the train. He created the train. He is the train. So you can't say creator. For 3 months, I went through this until he finally said there is no word. That's why we created the term God. Like
It's a
you can think
koan.
about this all you
Yeah.
want, but there
Yes.
is no word. Like it's
Yes.
beyond our measure of comprehension to try to understand what a God it truly is.
Halsey,
You know?
Ram Dass
Halsey, I
said,
met
well,
it.
sorry, I was
Yeah.
gonna, Ram
Yeah.
Dass says,
Yeah.
he goes, it's a finger pointing at the moon. You reach a certain point where you can't go, that's the moon. You just look and it just is. And there it
Mhm.
is. And even now, what I'm using to doesn't work. It's just, it can't be. It's,
Mhm.
I have studied everything that I could get my hands on since I was a kid to try and understand and know enough, right? Because I didn't have faith. I didn't have faith everything was just going to work out. So
Mhm.
I needed to know and I needed to understand. I've studied all these things, all of it. So many things for I've given up so much social life and all this other stuff to do this. And the more I studied, the more I learned across more fields, the more I realized I was never going to know much of anything at all about anything.
Mhm.
And then it dawned on me exactly what Halsey's saying. It was a very profound moment. I quite literally fell out of my chair laughing. And my future wife at the time thought I was having a stroke. I was in my 30s, right? I fell out of the chair laughing because I realized one thing: that which is truly real cannot be expressed in words.
Mm-hmm.
It's impossible.
Yep.
I am that I am. That's as close as you can get. Alan Watts, when you realize how perfect it all is, you will tilt your head back to the laugh. You will tilt your head to the sky and die in laughter.
Mm-hmm.
You,
Well,
it's just
yeah, Ian, think about this from, the point I was trying to make. Hey, can we find a more complex word? What in Halsey, what is the word God other than the total decomplexification of all language back down into a single thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a what is that? A point singularity. Can you explain a point singularity?
no.
Not with words.
I mean, they threw young underage women at Stephen Hawking to try and get him to do it, and he couldn't do it.
Yep.
Wasn't he on
That was a
Epstein
little
Island?
dark. That
Wasn't
was a
he on
little dark.
yeah.
No, that was funny. I just saw a meme about that, like literally like 10 minutes ago. Someone had put a meme about that on.
Wasn't he on Epstein Island?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm
Yeah.
getting at. No,
Yeah.
that's what I'm getting
I know.
at.
I know.
Yeah.
There's that fucking meme where it's Jeffrey Epstein on the four-wheeler and he's like, Doctor, he's like, all things are relative, am I right? Just kidding. Mikasa Sukasa. It's like, didn't think you'd be able to make it. And it's just like, but
I saw one yesterday that I almost cried over. You know that one where the couple are in bed and she goes, "I wonder what he's really thinking about."
Oh yeah.
And she's saying that, and then it's Bill Gates, and he goes, "How do I get her penicillin without her figuring it out?"
Well, on that note,
I love it.
Macabre humor. Hey, Tommy,
Yeah.
at least we're ending this one laughing. Of course, we're laughing
Yeah.
about some really dark shit, but we're laughing.
yeah, well, that's all you can do. That's all you can do is laugh.
That's exactly. Yeah.
That is our
Mhm.
own employed insanity. If the elites are going to use it to
Yes.
try to demolish the
Yes.
world, we can vice versa it and just laugh at it,
Mhm.
right? So, we'll put a pin in it for now. Halsey and Dominic, have you guys done a show together?
No, I
we
think
have
this is
not.
our first time meeting.
I'm a
first time
bad
we've even
host.
met. Yeah.
I'm a bad host. I was thinking that halfway through. I was like, have I not introduced them? Fuck.
Nope.
That's
So,
all right.
well,
I know who you are. I enjoy your work.
Retroactively. So there you go.
Same.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Everybody go in the description. Please go follow all them. Halsey's podcast is in there. All your Twitters, EM's YouTube, books, all that good stuff. We got another show right after this. But I'll send it to you guys when it's up. It'll be up later today. And yeah.
Awesome.
That was an awesome that was our awesome conversation. Thank you. That's
Appreciate it,
That
gentlemen.
was fun.
that was every once in a while it's like the swish. You just nail it and you're like, that was it. There it is.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then I look up and it says not recording and I'll blow my brain. Gentlemen, till next time. Thank you so Hey guys, real quick, you guys know Basil Baz, ARC, the Association for the Recovery of Children. I just did a fundraiser with them the other day, and I'm going to put this on to every episode I do. They are special forces veterans who physically rescue trafficked children. They have since 1993. They have a 100% success rate. They do not take salaries. They all have day jobs, and they literally rescue sex trafficked children. Donations to them are a tax write-off. I get nothing from them, and they have not asked me to put this on. I've included this little clip on episodes for the last year or so, and I'm just re-recording it because I just got to meet him just 2 days ago for future. It's November 25th, 2025, but this will be on every episode now for the next year. And there is nothing better you can do with your money. If you can support them for even $5, please do that. They truly are doing the Lord's work, and I think we all have an obligation to do that. Thank you so much.
Higher ultraviolet exposure is associated with lower mortality. The United Kingdom is a high latitude and low sunlight country. Researchers there collected data on over 360,000 participants in a study of UV exposure via solarium use. When compared with non-users, solarium users had 15% risk lowered of all-cause mortality, 23% lower risk of cardiovascular mortality, 14% lower risk of cancer mortality, and a 12% lower risk of non-cardiovascular, non-cancer mortality. In other words, all other causes. Quoting the researchers, our study adds to the growing evidence that the benefits of UV exposure outweigh the risks in low sunlight environments. A link to the original publication is available in the box below the video. Get some UV light this winter. Immerse yourself in the tranquility of the blue. Visit a Blue Room soon. www.blueroom.com.
Hey guys, a huge sponsor of the show is Heaven's Harvest Prepper Food. Clayton lives down in Georgia. He's been on the show before. It's actually nearby where I went to college. They are a huge sponsor of the show. They give me some money every month, even when I don't sell enough to warrant that paycheck. Meaning that the show is not free. It's just that it's free for you. If you guys need prepper food, or if you're just interested in supporting the show, I'd please ask you to go to the link in the description. Go to Heaven's Harvest Prepper Food, promo code TPC for 10% off. 72 servings per pail, 25-year shelf life. These things are, they double as dumbbells. Pasta Primavera, cheesy potato soup, mac and cheese, loaded baked potato casserole, chili mac, cheddar broccoli soup, cheesy lasagna, teriyaki rice. You can get banana chips. There's also raspberries, strawberries, and apples. There's a bunch of freeze-dried fruit, or you can even get seeds to plant your own garden. It's not a bad thing to have. It's like gold or ammunition. It's a good thing to have. It's a bad thing if you have to use it, but it's good. It's good to have it, not need it, than need it, not have it. So that's what I'd say. And if you just want to support the show, please go to the link in the description. Please go support them because they support me. Thank you so much, guys.